Right. Good afternoon. Welcome to this Corporate Scrutiny Committee meeting for a call-in. I'm Councillor Richard Hollis. I'm chairing this meeting. The other councillors we have on the committee are Debbie Andre, Vanessa Churchman, Stephen Hendry, John Hobart, Julie Jones-Evans, Michael Lilly, Chris Quirk, and Councillor Garrett. And there are a number of cabinet members and officers in attendance. I can't actually see them when they're not talking. Right. Can we please have mobile phones switched off, which I've asked for, and please allow a slight pause prior to speaking for when you unmute. And then when you finish speaking, if you turn your microphone off. At the end, if we have a vote will be taken by a roll call, and the clerk will call your name and can please confirm whether you want to vote for, against, or abstain. Right, we can now move to the agenda. As I say, this it is to do with the loan investment in Perpetuus Tidal Energy Centre, PTEC. This was called in by three councillors, Councillor Lilly, Councillor Andre and Councillor Garrett. And I invite Councillor Lilly to give us a short...
Chairman, did you want to do declarations of interest?
Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest?
Councillor Lilly.
Councillor Lilly. You unmute, I think, Councillor Lilly. Councillor Lilly, you need to unmute.
I apologize.
No, you're muted again.
I wish to declare that I am a trustee director of White Community Energy because there's obviously a connection regarding renewable energy in these discussions.
And have you spoken to the monitoring officer about this at all, whether you have a conflict of interest?
I have spoken on a number of occasions and he basically says that there isn't, no.
Well, the judgment is yours anyway. Right. Okay, if we could have a brief outline, please, of the reasons for the call-in and indicate your desired outcome, please.
Okay, on the 8th of September 2020, Corporate Scrutiny considered the latest PTEC report and made a decision to support the recommendation of not providing further finance, 244,000, and releasing up to 2/3 of Isle of Wight Council shares to PTEC to enable this private company to enable them to raise the finance for the project. Due to the concerns raised by the Undercliff Community Group and Knighton and Whitwell Parish Council, members of Corporate Scrutiny were made aware of additional information and a further recommendation to Cabinet at its meeting of the 10th of September 2020 that was not presented to the Corporate Committee on the 8th of September. The additional recommendation unknown to Corporate Scrutiny Committee was the Council's original loan term is extended for 5 years, is repayable alongside the other loan, which capitalised the company, and the Council release its position on the PTEC board subject to the additional funding being secured. This was information regarding a clear relaxation of loan conditions of the original Isle of Wight Council 1 million loan. I believe with the other members involved in the call-in that if Corporate Scrutiny Committee had been given details of this additional recommendation, it would have affected our decision. In looking at the material provided by the Undercliff Community Group, I have become concerned that Isle of Wight Council could be in danger of judicial review, as it raised a question mark on whether there was sufficient consultation and whether correct procedures were followed. I put before the committee that the additional recommendation is a real change from the report and recommendation presented to this committee on the 8th of September. I supported the recommendation of not providing a further loan of 244k, as my position of objection to this further loan when it was first mooted earlier this year had not changed. I wrote to the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member, Councillor Hutchinson, responsible for PTEC, giving a detailed statement of my misgivings based on the market information on tidal energy alongside other renewable energy sources such as solar and wind. I have raised concern about PTEC since I was elected in 2017 and have been deeply concerned whether PTEC was solvent and whether it could legally continue to trade. It appears from a confidential commercial sensitive report attached to the PTEC report presented to corporate scrutiny on the 8th of September that PTEC did have possibility of survival, but these were now very dependent on the UK's current consultation on its contracted difference round 4 next year, where tidal energy might be reinstated for government subsidy. Members have to be aware that tidal energy is the most expensive of all renewable energies to set up and is reliant on heavy subsidies. This project is also reliant on accessing EU funding, which again is questionable due to Brexit. It was a brave and good decision not to provide further funding, but relaxation of the existing loan conditions would, in my view, put the existing public fund lent to PTEC at risk, not protect them. The Cabinet in January 2013 was presented with a report titled Creation of a Joint Venture Company to Deliver the Solent Ocean Energy Centre. This report was presented by Councillor George Brown, Deputy Leader of the then Conservative administration. This report established the terms and responsibilities for the £1 million loan from Isle of Wight Council. It is important to note Isle of Wight Council was a guarantor also of up to £1 million to the Crown Estate if the joint venture company, PTEC, were to make decisions in contravention of the terms of lease of the seabed and the energy centre site. This risk, alongside other risks, were mitigated by the rights of Isle of Wight Council to veto decisions of PTEC due to being a non-diluted shareholder and having a directorship of the board, and the Isle of Wight Council loan having priority status in relation to other investors. The report states, even if the project proceeds, it's possible that its earnings may not be expected scale to provide the project returns to the council. The council would, however, be the first of the investors in the project to have its initial loan investment repaid, and this does increase the likelihood of its recovery, at least its initial investment in the project. John Metcalfe, in his letter to the chair of PTEC on the 12th of March 2020, in relation to the request by PTEC for a further loan, stated any sum advanced by the council will be provided on the same basis as the original investment. So why would Isle of Wight Council change the basis of the original investment in the light of deciding not to make the advance of 244k? The Isle of Wight Council report presented to Scrutiny and Cabinet on the 8th of September and the 10th of September states in section 51, financial risks arising from the further investment will be mitigated through a set of conditions as set out in Appendix 1. Although it is possible the council may not recover its additional or original loan investment. Without the extensions to the marine licenses, there will be little opportunity for the council to recover these investments at all. Section 52 goes on to say it's highly unlikely PTEC will be able to raise the funds necessary during this window of opportunity from the sale of some of all the council shareholding, currently 15% and undilutable. However, Isle of Wight is proposing to provide the opportunity to sell its undilutable shares and relax its loan conditions, principally by taking away its priority lender status. There is no current evidence presented that shows PTEC will be able to raise funds, so why give away current terms and conditions until there are clear funds on the table? At this stage, my recommendation on the evidence I have is for the Cabinet to not change the terms of the existing loan in any way and continue to have a place on the board until an independent report provides evidence of investment that required changes to existing arrangements, and these were clearly of benefit to Isle of Wight Council, Isle of Wight residents in ensuring the loan is secure, will be repaid, and all Isle of Wight interests are protected and the promised benefits are realised. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Do any of the other two people who asked for this call in, do you have anything to add that has not already been said? Please don't, I don't want hours of, have you got anything else? No? Right, okay. Then we'll move on. Who do we go to first? The monitoring officer, I think, from the monitoring officer, that if that is this proposed decision lawful? Monitoring officer, please.
Chairman, I believe in my absence, the Deputy Monitoring Officer provided committee members with a written statement confirming that, subject to all the financial confirmation you've received from the Chief Finance Officer are in place, then it is an entirely lawful decision.
Right, okay, well, we'll accept that. Well, I will accept that, but does the committee accept that? Yes, right, okay. Then we move to the Chief Finance Officer, Mr. Ward.
Thank you, Chair. I'm content that this decision is within the capacity of the Cabinet to make. I'm content that it's a value for money decision. It's in accordance with the Council's value for money responsibilities, and I'm also content that it's within the framework for the budget and policy.
Right. Councillor Lilly. Councillor Lilly, you're still muted.
Okay.
You're still muted.
Okay, through. Okay. I wish to ask Mr. Ward a following question. Thank you for providing a detailed answer, but in your answer to the committee, you did not specifically answer the question in regard the relaxation of the loan conditions, right? The extension of the loan and the proposal to take away Isle of Wight Council's rights to a position of a directorship on the committee. You answer questions relating to the original commentary on option E in the report, but not the further additional recommendation regarding the existing loan. Can you answer that, please?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Lilly. I mean, the first consideration obviously for the Cabinet is whether to invest or not to invest. And regardless of who, or when I say invest, or facilitate an investment. And once you've come to the conclusion, which I believe rightly in this case, is that there's a continued investment in order to help protect the council's investment, then I think the next question is, who should be the funder? Generally speaking, if you're seeking to protect council funds, and in circumstances such as this, you would expect the council to be funder of last resort. because that's the way in which you can best protect council funds. In the event where where you're presented with that prospect, obviously there are terms associated with taking that route, and the terms on offer to the council were exactly those terms that you mentioned, Councillor Lilly. So the alternative would have been, as I said, having elected to take the decision to invest because it's in the council's economic, environmental and financial interest to do so, then you're faced with the proposition of, do you invest with public funds and put public funds at risk, or do you facilitate the investment through an alternative means which are proposed here that were proposed here in recommendation E, which doesn't put further public funds at risk, but brings with it some terms and conditions associated with that alternative investment. And so the balanced judgment is, do you put further council funds at risk, or do you accept the terms and conditions that are offered to you? And in this instance, the terms and conditions included those that you've mentioned around relaxation of the senior debt position and the extension of the loan position. But in both of those circumstances, in taking a decision such as that, it is my view that the Cabinet have better protected the council's investment and provided greater opportunity for those objectives to be met. There were just simply terms and conditions of an alternative. I don't think the council clearly has the discretion to say, no, we're not accepting those terms and conditions, but you're left with the alternative then of undertaking the investment yourself with public funds and putting those public funds at risk.
Right, thank you very much. No, Councillor Lilly, I'm going to move
Can
on
I
now.
ask a supplementary question to Mr. Ward?
Right, if it's a quick one, yes.
Is there therefore an offer on the table, because you're talking about as if the Isle of Wight Council had clearly had a proposal of an investor putting money in that required those changes? Can you confirm that? Because why would you agree to those terms changes unless you had an offer?
The changes are changes that ought to be acceptable to the Cabinet in the event that an alternative investor came forward. Whether there was an investor that came forward or not, at that stage was not necessarily relevant to the decision. It's about the terms that would have been acceptable to the council as an alternative to invest in further public funds.
Right, I'm going to, Dave Stewart wants to come in now, the leader of the council, and then we'll go to Chris Quirk, and then Debbie Andre.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Can I firstly congratulate you on your recent election as Chairman of the Scrutiny Committee, and I acknowledge your first decision was to accept this call-in, which I think reflects your fair and transparent approach to your responsibilities. Turning to the matter in hand, can I make two comments? Firstly, as Ward Councillor for Knighton within the PTEC development, within the area which the PTEC development is proposed, I can confirm that there have been representations made to me from a number of residents who objected to this proposal. These include the group known informally as the Undercliff Community Group, whom I am aware members of the Scrutiny Committee have received communications detailing their objections and the rationale that sits behind them. As a result of these communications, I confirmed with the Chief Executive that the call-in process requires comment from both the Council's Chief Financial Officer and the Monitoring Officer about the integrity of the Cabinet decision, and I'm pleased to say that we've heard that today here. Secondly, as Leader of the Council and Chairman of the Cabinet, I would remind members that the PTEC project was originally supported with an unsecured loan of some £1 million. It is my understanding that a previous administration who approved the funding saw this as an opportunity to place the island at the forefront of developing renewable energies of all types as a route to underpinning economic development and job creation. The project has stalled for reasons set out in the Cabinet report and requires additional investment. if it is to realise these earlier aspirations. However, although it would be possible for the council to invest a further £244,000 in the project, in the current financial climate and with the focus on coronavirus crisis, I do not believe this would be the appropriate use of public funds at this time. As it stands, if no further investment is made, then the project is likely to fail and our £1 million will be lost. On this basis, the Corporate Scrutiny Committee was happy to support the original recommendation made to Cabinet, including one proposing allowing PTEC to sell 2/3 of the council's shares in the company to raise the finance to get through to phase 2A. It is, and I would interrupt here at this point, it is my understanding that the funds would be achieved if that original decision now stands, together with the additional recommendation that was brought to Cabinet. Let us not forget that PTEC will still need further investment to get to phase 2B. So even by taking this action, there is no real certainty the project will proceed. But at least by the council taking this action, it has a chance of success and the original aspirations being achieved. The additional recommendations agreed by Cabinet simply add some additional conditions necessary for PTEC to secure the necessary funds to complete stage 2A. They are completely consistent with the intent of allowing PTEC to sell some of the council shares with which the Scrutiny Committee had no issues. The current loan expires in May 2022. If PTEC continues to have no value, then it's immaterial whether it terminates, as the council will not be able to recover its £1 million investment. Extending the term only gives PTEC longer to be in a position to repay the council loan. The council will continue to have a key influence over the company as the holder of the agreement for lease with the Crown Estate, as a landowner and local planning authority. Since it will be a minority shareholder, then it is arguable that that is not directly involved with the day-to-day management of the company. So if members wish that it should be so, then this can really only be achieved by investing a further 244k in the company. Whether the council's loan is repaid at the same time or in advance of others would seem to be immaterial if the company has no value and is unable to pay any loans at all. Again, if members wish that it should be so, then this can really only be achieved by investing a further 244k in the company. However, if by adjusting the existing arrangements and the investment from elsewhere is found, then the project can continue. This would include a bid to the government under the contract for difference currently being invited. And it is on that basis that the report to Cabinet has been prepared and which Scrutiny are now being asked to reconsider and make any further recommendation to Cabinet. As I say, I just repeat, it is my understanding that the funds, if we go through with this, the funds can be achieved with the additional recommendations that have been brought to Cabinet. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Leader of the Council. I now move to Chris Quirk, please.
Thank you. It seems to me that the basis of this being called in was the fact that we would have made a different decision if we'd had all of the information that we have now. I have to say that having read all of the information now made available, my decision would not have changed one iota. What we have is a proposal that sees us continuing the possibility of having environmentally friendly wave energy coming in, and it seems to allow that without us putting good money after bad by increasing the loan. It seems a bit of a no-brainer to me that you go do what the Cabinet have actually done. My position won't have changed. I would support the decision that the Cabinet has made. It seems to be eminently sensible.
Right, Councillor Andre, Debbie Andre.
Thank you, Councillor Hollis. I have to admit, I've read through the statement that's been given by the Section 151 Finance Officer, and I do have concern that whilst I appreciate that we do have a commitment, especially more so now that we have biosphere status under an environmental and sustainability portfolio, I'm concerned that it's stated that this was not ever intended for revenue generation. And to my mind, I know I'm going over on ground, but to actually have committed an unsecured loan for £1 million does concern me greatly. I think in terms of how we move forward, looking through the mitigations that are listed in the report under the risk analyses, I am not convinced that the risk analysis, that the recommendations, that the evidence that was asked for has actually been provided. So I am concerned that if we are now changing the terms, what I would like to know is the terms and the conditions that are attached to this latest recommendation. Presumably, this is a recent change. They were not terms and conditions that were part of the original contract. Can the Section 151 officer just confirm that this is a recent change to our conditions?
With your indulgence, Chair.
Yes.
That's right. The proposed changes are to relax the repayment date or extend the repayment dates, and to relinquish the council's senior debt status so that it's on an equal status with the other partner. So it's repaid at the same time on an equal basis. So they are changes, but obviously necessary changes to incentivize an alternative investor to make that investment that the council would otherwise have to make itself.
Can I have just a quick
supplement? Yes, Councillor Andre, I mean, yes.
As I understand it, we are guarantors to the licence. So, and the licence is actually worth some, as I understand it, monetary value. So, with these proposed changes, I understand that it affects our loan status in terms of payback, but in terms of us being guarantors to the licence, do we still retain that position as guarantors under the new terms and conditions?
Mr. Ward?
I'm not sure that's a question that I can answer. Maybe one of my colleagues is best placed to answer that.
Would the who would best answer that one? Councillor Stewart, do you want to come in there?
Yes, I think that's probably one I would just double check with the Chief Executive. But of course, we are the holders of both the approval from the Marine Maritime Organisation and the government. But I'll get the Chief Executive to give me the precise words.
Right, we'll move to the Chief Executive then. John Metcalfe.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think the licence that Councillor Andre is referring to is actually an agreement for lease. The council is the holder for the agreement for lease with the Crown Estate, which expires in March of next year. At the point that PTEC becomes operational, the council is required to convert the lease it has with the Crown Estate to a lease for PTEC. So effectively, we've only got a very short-term operating window where we're the holder of an agreement for lease and nothing more than that. At the moment, the lease conditions are achieved, or the conditions for lease achieved, then PTEC will take that lease on board, not ourselves. So at the moment, there's nothing going on the site. There's no work being done on the site. PTEC are working to extend the period within which that agreement, or they would like to work to extend that period for the agreement for lease. Without that, without that extension, the agreement, the option for the lease will end in March of next year. And then whoever comes afterwards will have to start again working with the Crown Estate to agree a new lease, the terms of the lease and everything that goes with that. So effectively, without that continued period of time for PTEC to get its financial package and reach financial close, which will go beyond March of next year, then it's unlikely the project will proceed. Hopefully I've answered Councillor Andre's question.
Right. If I may just say something, if it is of any help, is not to take us back, but I remember well in 2013, when this was originally started, and people were very excited. We also had a marine generating company working on the island just near Venture Keys. And perhaps if they hadn't been lured away by a big grant up in Scotland, they might still be here. But it was a very exciting time, and the potential was phenomenal, really. Anyway, if that is of any help, George Brown was mentioned, and I just wanted to, I was around at that particular time. Right, the next person I think who wants to speak is Vanessa Churchman, Councillor Vanessa Churchman.
Yes, like you, Richard, I voted for this proposal originally, and sorry about that outside line, and I thought it was a brilliant idea. One thing I'm not quite clear about, will the companies still be able to go after EU funding if we allow the shares to be transferred? I just wanted to double check that, because although I've read the report, it gives the impression that if we don't supply the 244,000, then that won't happen. So I saw Councillor Stewart nod his head. I would say we're between a rock and a hard place. 2000 and what are we talking about, 9? We're 13 rather, talking about 7 years ago, and the whole of life on this planet has changed. I suspect if COVID wasn't around at the moment, we would give them £244,000. I really do, but that's a personal opinion. To me, I think we should give them the shares, because I would rather have something in view than nothing, because at some stage these sort of projects have to come into the world, and if we don't support them, then my goodness, what are we in for? Thank you, Richard.
Yes, I prefer it if people call me chairman in a formal situation, but I do accept that I was christened. Councillor Stewart.
Yes, Chair, just checking I'm, yes, you can hear me okay. So it's my understanding that Councillor Churchman is absolutely right. Actually, the ideal world, many would say, would be for the council to invest the £244,000. But for the reasons I outlined earlier, in the current climate, it is my view that we have to think about the priority, which is saving our community, keeping everybody safe, and dealing with the COVID-19. The understanding I have is that if we go ahead and pursue the approval which the Cabinet gave previously, that the PTEC partners that are there will then be able to access additional funding to take this forward. And my understanding includes some European funding that currently exists, which they can be involved with. I want to call it Tiger funding, but I probably got that name wrong. Certainly the chief exec could clarify on that point. So that's the whole point about this, is the third option is we don't do anything and we lose £1 million and nothing progresses. And for the reasons you highlighted, Councillor Churchman, that's not an option. We, again, this is a compromise. There is it is called the Tiger funding, just so that you know. So hopefully that answers that question, Chair.
Right. Do any other officers wish to? No, I'd to go back to Councillor Lilly at this stage. Does that clear? And Councillor Andre, does that clear sort of a few things up? I think Councillor Lilly first. We need to unmute.
Thank you, Chair.
No, you're still unmuted. You obviously like to cut yourself off.
No, thank you, Chair. No, not really. I still have several questions, and my biggest sort of query is that we, Isle of Wight Council at this present time is a 15% shareholder, undiluted shareholder, which is what you have to protect the rights, particularly of public funding, and we have priority rights as a priority lender for a loan. I cannot, if the project is of real financial viability, then this minority stake and this particular stake will not deter an investor. And in fact, the 85% shareholders have adequate shares to actually give to other investors. I feel that there is no need from my experience of the commercial world to reduce our terms and conditions to get favorability to other investors. It's not known. You would not do that in any other situation.
Well, I don't know whether you can actually say that. Can we move to the Chief Executive, John Metcalfe, who might be able to help us here?
Can I just come in at some point, please, Chair?
Just listen.
Executive can answer both.
All right, Councillor Andre, you come in, and then we go to the Chief Executive.
I appreciate that, Chair. Thank you for your indulgence. I'd just like to pick up on something that Councillor Lilly has said. I do feel here that the burden of responsibility, as it were, seems to be being placed on the Isle of Wight Council as currently a 15% shareholder. And I feel that there is almost this feeling of we are being pressured into an action, because if we don't, then we risk the company going under. I would just say that I would not like to think that good money would be thrown after bad, and I don't think this is the right way forward. I think sometimes you are in a situation where you have to hold firm, and I think this is one of those situations. Thank you.
Right. Can we move to John Metcalfe, Chief Executive, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not sure there's an awful lot more for me to add, really. In response to Councillor Lilly's comments, as the paper sets out, one of the other shareholders has already added an additional £400,000 into the company to keep the company going over the last 2 or 3 years, since the government changed its position in terms of contract for difference in 2017. So, in a sense, they've already committed additional funds to the company without requiring the council to put any more in. So, I think the approach this time was very much along the lines of the council as an investor. Can it put any more money into the company? However, I don't think we'd be having this conversation had it not been for the fact that the company has partnered with another organisation in the sense of being able to secure EU funding from the Tiger Fund. Those funds are there for the company to draw down, which will help it achieve phase 2A of its next piece of work, which is effectively an extension to the consents for the lease from the Crown Estate and the environmental consent from the MMO. So they've secured a third party to come in and assist. That third party has brought with it the Tiger funding, but it does require £244,000 to unlock that funding. Even once that has been achieved, the company has set out that it still would require further funds, likely to come from the EU, likely to come from Tiger funds, but still subject to further funding to match that funding to deliver the rest of the project. So in the concept of risk, we could put £244,000 in now and protect all of our position around shares, around seat on the directors board, all of those sorts of things. But that wasn't the view of the cabinet. But the view of the cabinet was to carry on trying to support the company in another way. The other way that that was suggested to us was by PTEC, on the basis of the council's report being published, where everyone agreed that we could give up 2/3 of our shares for PTEC to raise the money. So that wasn't questioned previously. PTEC came back and approached the council and simply said, we think we could do that on the basis of what you are proposing to do, but we need these further commitments. So it was a case of these further commitments will release the additional £244,000 and allow the project to proceed through to the end of 2A, or we don't put any money in, and then actually we just wait and see what happens to the project, and does it fail on the basis of the fact there's no further money going into the project. The option, should members choose to accept it, I guess, if we still want to have all of that control over the company that we presently have and enjoy that control, would be to invest £244,000, retain our shareholding at the current level, keep a seat on the board, but we would still have to extend the loan term because the loan term ends in May 2022. Chairman, I'm sorry, I wasn't expecting to speak, so hopefully that helps, but I'm happy to answer any more questions.
No, thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Lilly, do you want to, have you got anything else to?
I want to ask a further question of John Metcalfe, if I may.
Is it?
It's in relation to what he said. The confidential document that was attached to the report, which was an independent report commissioned by Isle of Wight Council, clearly states before Isle of Wight Council makes a funding decision.
Chairman, I think we're talking about confidential document. Sorry.
Hold on. If that is if you're referring to the confidential document,
I'm not mentioning names in it. I'm saying what it recommends.
You don't start quoting from it. Otherwise, where do you stop?
Basically, Chair, it that Isle of Wight Council should request more clarity from PTEC. I want to know, has that clarity been requested?
We have written confirmation from PTEC that the funds would be available subject to the additional recommendation agreed by the Cabinet, which was option E.
Right. Okay. Now that so the Chief Executive has asked that question. Anything more to add? No. Right.
Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Quirk. Councillor Quirk, did you want to come in? Councillor Quirk, Councillor Whittle, and Councillor Jones-Evans.
I'm in the same place as you, Councillor Quirk here. I was just going to say, I think we've debated this. I think there's clear grounds for supporting the decision made by the Cabinet, and I would move that we actually support the decision of Cabinet.
Well, before we get to that, we've got to ask Councillor Lilly whether he wants to put a motion forward. But before we do that, who's going to go first? Councillor Whittle, do you want to go first because your name was on the list first? Councillor Whittle?
Yes, I'll wait for the box.
Right.
The red box is still on Councillor Quirk, Chairman. I can't speak until the red box is off me.
Okay, that's off. He's off now.
It's on you now.
We can't. We've got too many cameras on it.
We've got too many cameras on it, so too many photos up, I think.
So all I was going to say is this. If you go back to when this project was started, the object of the game was to improve the Isle of Wight's green credentials and reputation for innovation and to create jobs. That's why the shares that we've given up have been given up. It's because it's still our main priority is to make jobs and give the Isle of Wight green credentials by offering the seabed. So that's why the shares aren't really material at this stage of the game, because if we pull out and they haven't got those shares, they won't be able to continue anyway. Thank you.
Right. And Councillor Jones-Evans, please. Has she gone? No, she is. There she is. Councillor Jones-Evans, you indicated that you wish to speak.
Yeah, can you come back to me 1 second? I'll just be a minute. Apologies.
It's got to carry on, Chairman.
I think we have to carry on. Councillor James Evans, I have to carry on. Councillor James Evans, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I'm sorry, Chair. I'll indicate I'm actually at work at the minute. I've just been serving a customer. If there's time for me to come back in a couple of minutes, I'd appreciate it.
I can't. I'm going to move on, I'm afraid. Councillor Lilly, if you would you you were the person, more the lead person calling this in. Would you do you have a final thing you want to say? Do you have a proposal to make? No, we need to have you.
Yeah, yes, Chair. I just have a very quick final statement I wish to make, and then I would wish to make a
proposal.
And I have a proposal, right?
Right.
I totally accept and take responsibility of being part of the decisions by Scrutiny to support the option C and option E that was made. And I continue to support those. I do not support fully the additional recommendation made by Cabinet, because I actually feel that there is no real concrete evidence, right, presented that to us that will show PTEC will be able to raise funds. So why give away current terms and conditions until there are clear funds on the table? There are too many uncertainties, such as uncertainty of consistency, continuity of government energy policy. We do not know what the outcome will be of the contractor differences round 4. The current consultation, the uncertainty over extension of consents, especially given recent moves to protect seabed environment. We don't actually know whether the consents would actually, in their present form, be continued. The uncertainty of the existing connection to the grid, which we haven't spoken about. The reality that tidal energy cannot be delivered for many years, way beyond the proposed 5-year loan extension. Uncertainty over continued availability of Tiger funding while Brexit is in progress. I do question that. I really question the claimed benefit to Isle of Wight community, which I think is simply unconvincing. I hope the response by, I hope that further evidence could be brought forward, because I would like to see the various vision that Councillor Whittle put forward, but I don't think it is going to be practically happen in this present climate and climate change. At this stage, my recommendation on the evidence I have is for the Cabinet to not change the terms of the existing loan in any way and continue to have a place on the board until an independent report provides evidence of investment that required changes to existing arrangements, and these were clearly of benefit for Isle of Wight Council, Isle of Wight residents in ensuring the loan is secure, will be repaid, and all Isle of Wight interests are protected and the promised benefits are realised. Okay, I look for a seconder.
Right, that's seconded by Councillor Andre. Right, we'll move to a vote on that. It was a rather long proposal. I didn't have time to write the whole thing down, but I think you get the gist of it. Those people in favour, I'm for that recommendation from Councillor Lilly.
Chairman, do you want Megan to ask the name and we'll do 4 again?
Yes, yes, we do. We've had to be a name vote. Right, Megan Tuckwell will call out the names and you either say for or against.
Councillor Andre.
For.
Councillor Churchman.
Against.
Councillor Hendry.
Against.
Councillor Hobart.
Against.
Councillor Jones-Evans.
Against.
Councillor Lilly.
I think that was 4.
And Councillor Quirk.
Against.
4, I meant, sorry.
Right. Councillor Lilly said 4. Councillor Quirk said against. Yes.
Yes, that's correct. That's
Right.
5 votes to 2, Chairman.
5 votes to 2. Right. Okay. So we then move on to actions that we take. We have 5 choices. Do you have those choices in front of you? No, you don't. Do you?
Originally, Councillor Quirk was going to make a proposal.
Oh, Councillor Quirk was going to make a proposal. Right. Councillor Quirk.
My proposal is that we continue to support the decision of Cabinet.
Right. And we'll vote on that.
I will second that.
Oh, sorry, beg your pardon. Yes.
Chairman, Councillor Churchman, I will second that.
Right, Councillor Church will second that.
Councillor Andre.
Against.
Councillor Churchman.
Councillor Churchman. Well, 4 or against?
4.
Councillor Hendry.
4.
Councillor Hobart.
4.
Councillor Jones-Evans.
Councillor Jones-Evans. Councillor right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Councillor Lilly.
Against.
Councillor Quirk.
4.
And Councillor Hollis.
I didn't vote the first time. I'm not voting the second time. So I'll leave it at that.
5 in favour, 2 against.
5 in favour, 2 against. So that is carried. So thank you very much indeed. Is that it? Anything else?
It, Chairman.
Sorry?
That's it, Chairman.
That's it, right? You may now turn your phones back on again. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Apparently there's a problem.